welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Amy Shippy. She is the founder of Lady BizWiz and multiple successful businesses. And she's also she has a true passion in helping others, especially women, succeed in business. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Amy. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about empowering women entrepreneurs through your tips and tricks, through your stories. So, first, let's go on and understand a bit about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
Yes, thank you. So I have been an entrepreneur for the past 30 years. It's basically been my entire career path is to open businesses from nothing and create successful businesses from there. I currently own three businesses. You can see my messy studio behind me,
Right.
where I produce products from my art. And, about 5 or 6 years ago, I got really empowered and excited about helping women get out of their own heads and become successful entrepreneurs and, creating some tips and tactics that would help them continuing to move forward in their journey of being a business owner.
Right, right, Amy. So I want to understand, women entrepreneurs, they know about so many things, they manage so many things, even in households and all. In terms of business, what are the challenges they face? And some of the challenges only women entrepreneurs face, nobody else does. So help us understand that backdrop, something from the ground, so that people understand things from the ground better.
So the difference, I think, or at least my experience has been that women kind of can tell themselves a negative message. So they can have this fabulous idea, and then as soon as they come up to the first obstacle or roadblock in that idea, and it kind of halts their forward momentum, they then start to tell themselves, well, it was a stupid idea. I wasn't going to make it anyway. I should have never come up with the idea. I don't know what I was thinking. And that is very different from male entrepreneurs that I have worked with. Male entrepreneurs tend to say, okay, and they take those obstacles as more of a challenge to get on the other side, where women want to self-doubt themselves. And what I try to tell women is, every entrepreneur is going to experience a challenge. There are going to be obstacles. You are going to want to have done it one way, and that way is going to have some kind of roadblock. But I think women have some of the best ideas out there for innovation, and especially because of how they work in their households and with their children. They're very inventive on ways to solve problems that they face all the time in their, creating products and things like that, streamlining operations, because as a woman and their household responsibilities a lot, that's what they have to do. So they have fabulous ideas. But what I find is that as soon as they come up with an obstacle in the journey, and my husband accuses me of this all the time, it's like, you're just taking it personal. It's not personal. It's just business. And I say, well, it still hurt my feelings. So it feels very personal. And he says, you've got to get on the other side of that, Amy. To be able to be successful and launch your dream, you have to stop taking things as personal. Now, as a woman, I don't think I'm ever going to stop taking things personal. I am wired up the way I'm wired up, and I think it's a pretty great way to be wired up. So I'm not telling anybody to stop how they're intrinsically wired. However, what I have done in my own business is I set very small, achievable goals when I am starting a business. So therefore, I can check that goal off my list really quickly. I also set end dates to my goals, because for me, if I don't, that goal will go out forever because I don't ever kind of get back to it. So for me, I like to set goals that they're micro goals. They're not huge goals. They're goals that I can kind of get done. And most women love a checklist. I always carry a checklist, and most women love a checklist. So I'm very purposeful and write those goals into my checklist so that when I get it done, off the list it goes. And what I feel like that does on a chemical basis is when we finish something that we set out to do, we feel really empowered. And I think we get a chemical boost from that. And so nothing makes me want to go on to the next one because I've achieved something. When I set goals that are as big as a mountain, I'm like everybody else. It just seems insurmountable and I get discouraged. And women can be discouraged probably a little bit quicker than men can. And so what I'm saying is set up a system for you that creates you on the winning side of your goals, not the goals on the winning side of you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what's the best way for them to overcome this whole, extra thinking that is not required over if there is a good idea? Firstly, how do you vet that idea so that you become more confident of it? And then, how do you get down to rather over-analyzing it, rather test it down on the ground, get it running? You've got several businesses, and Lady BizWiz we talked about, Marche de Marc Macarons. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
You're pretty close.
Blue Peppy Designs, Lottie Bellies. I mean, so many of them. I want to understand with all that experience, how do people vet their ideas?
So, I joke, if my husband takes me on vacation for a week, I will come up with 10 businesses. I am not kidding you. There'll be 10 businesses. Now, one thing I always have handy for me is I carry a tiny little notebook like this around. Now, I probably have 30 of them on my desk. So I collect them. I love them. And I hold notebooks. And when I'm on vacation or I keep one in my car, I write down my ideas. I have lots of ideas. Now, most of those ideas never go anywhere. Really, 99% of them never go anywhere. But I like the idea of creating ideas. So I'm a creative kind of person. So I write down my ideas. I carry these on vacation with me. I carry one in my purse. One sits in my car. So when I have an idea, I write it down. And so, I then start the process. If I like the idea enough, I'll start doing research on the idea. So who out there in the space has an idea? I mean, none of my ideas, what I would say, are super original or, completely mine, but I always try to figure out a way I can spin something that is unique to my personality, even though I said, like, I own a macaron company. Macarons are not uniquely mine. I created some flavors that are kind of fun. My customer service is a little bit different. So I start kind of looking out there, who does what my idea is. And then, so I do that research. And so maybe I find that there's really not enough space for me to get into it. Maybe it's just not that original enough. So then that idea goes away. But one that I kind of latch onto, I'll see, my competition is out there. How can I do it differently? How can I do it better? How can I add my own spin to it? And I start accumulating in my notebook that research notes. The next thing I do is, I want to make money out of my businesses. I want my businesses to generate revenue. I am not in the business of hobby businesses. I have hobbies and I love my hobbies, but nobody pays me for my hobbies. I play guitar. Nobody pays me to play guitar. I actually take lessons. That is going to be a hobby that remains with me forever. So my businesses, I want to generate revenue with. So then I start looking at, what are my obstacles in that? How much do I have to buy supplies? Where do I have to get those supplies from? What are my competition selling what I'm looking at selling? And what does that margin look like for me? Is there ways to get in to make more profit? Is there a lot of licenses and legal hoops that I have to go through to get that business idea off the ground? Because some industries have a lot more licensing and requirements than other industries. So those are things I start to look at as I start to kind of put numbers behind it. And again, if you looked at my notes, every product has a note system attached with it. They all have that same process. And then I want to find out as who my customer is. What does my customer look like? How am I going to find that customer? And anybody who tells me that they're just going to put it on social media, I'm like, that is not a marketing strategy that you're ever going to get any traction with unless you've got really 1 million followers going in. So where is my customer and how can I find my customer? And what is that going to look like financially what it's going to cost me. And so what ends up happening is I have this little system I go through, and no matter what business idea I have, it goes through the exact same system. It goes through exactly what my new masterclass is going to be teaching people to do. And you can take any idea, any product, or any business, and you put it to that same litmus test so you can see what are the actual potential out of it, what are some of the roadblocks you may be finding, and is it worth an idea? Is it an idea, I guess, worth moving forward with financially? Do you have the resources to do it? So you listed a bunch of my businesses. None of those businesses got started in the same year or in the same month. I don't start a new business until my current business or my latest business is basically up and going. And I talk about businesses like in terms of kids. I have 3 children. They're all in college now. And, you know, when I had an infant baby, they required all of my time. I mean, I had to get up when they got up. I had to feed them when they were hungry. So they required all of my energy. And I think of a new business exactly the same. A new business requires all of my energy. I'm pouring everything I have into it. But when a business kind of hits the teenage years, I can leave it to go out to dinner or go do what I want to do. They don't need me sitting there watching them. They're pretty self-sufficient. And so it's really around the kind of the teenage years that I start looking at creating a new business. Now, what I have found is following my methodology, I can get to the teenage years of business much faster than it took me to get my teenage years to the teenage years. It doesn't take me as much time. But yeah, I mean, it's very intentional and needs to be very intentional when you're getting ready to start a business. And this is where a lot of women entrepreneurs also struggle is things like numbers. They don't really want to do numbers. They don't like numbers. And numbers really do drive everything that you're going to do in your business. So I encourage women entrepreneurs when they work with me to get very comfortable with the numbers. Numbers are not something to be scared of. And I can show them very clear and easy formulas to understand and get comfortable with the numbers. So it's really not as scary as a lot of people want it to be. And for me, I just find opening businesses and owning businesses a lot more fun. I mean, I love doing it, and I love sharing these things with women. We all make mistakes. We all have investments or ideas that we thought we wanted to do and they didn't work. But we just have to keep moving forward and keep going in spite of the things that don't work out the way we want it to.
Absolutely, absolutely, Amy. You have lots of experience. You have lots of understanding of this business concept. So whether earlier on you had or not, when you started, I'm not aware of that, but now you are. And so this experience is very, very helpful to a lot of women entrepreneurs. But what about them who are not as, they know as much as you do about businesses? They're just housewives, or they're taking care of their house, doing office work also, and they hit a good idea. What do they do with that idea? What is the first thing that they can do with that? Who should they go and discuss that idea? Should it be their husbands? Should it be their friends? Who is it? So that, it does not get killed, but it takes off the ground. What is the best way? Where is the support system that they can actually seek at that point in time?
So for me, it has been my spouse. My husband has always been a huge cheerleader of what I have. Now, not every woman out there has that kind of support system within their spouse. And sometimes it's just a little too close. And, sometimes you just can't always take constructive criticism that well from your spouse. So I understand all of that. And sometimes I don't take very great constructive criticism from my husband either. So no offense. So that happens. But I have also been very intentional in creating a community of entrepreneurial women that I respect. And I can go to them and in a safe space, talk about my ideas. I do always encourage criticism on my idea. I do encourage people finding holes in my concept, because if they'll find holes that I didn't see, I can build a stronger and more solid foundation. Criticism is not something that ends my idea, but I sometimes cannot see the bigger picture because I'm so focused on the way I have seen it in my mind. So I do surround myself with women entrepreneurs. A lot of people who hire me as Lady BizWiz, that's one of the reasons they hire me, is they give their idea and I give them that criticism and that feedback to make their business stronger. So you can do it through a community. You can do it through a paid consultant if your budget allows for that. You can find online communities that you can be, realistic about who you are and what you're doing. And then again, if you have a relationship with your spouse or family members that are encouraging, I always go back to them. But I will tell you, my mother has basically told me every business idea I've ever had were going to be great, huge, gigantic failures. So she didn't like any of them, and I did it anyway. So I mean, it really depends on who you are and what your structure is. But I will tell you, if you are purposeful, and it goes for women and men. I mean, if you are purposeful in creating a community of people that are like-minded as you, not always the same beliefs, but just believe in the entrepreneurial spirit, believe in creating something from nothing, you will get a lot of value from
Right, Amy. Now, your idea, when you get that idea, how should you evaluate it vis-a-vis your skills? Is an idea itself is a big thing, or is your skill the bigger thing at that point in time to evaluate your idea? Are they two different things, or they need to come together so that you are able to launch that business at all?
So I think they're two different things. So what I have developed in my own entrepreneurial journey is basically a repeatable checklist that I go through. And then I take any idea. So the idea really doesn't matter. I could take any idea and put it up against this checklist of pattern that I do. And those two things together will tell me if it's something I want to move forward or not. The really great thing about doing that, or having been able to do that, is I can actually talk to anybody about any idea, and I can put it through the same mental checklist to go, okay, here are these things. How does it stack up against this? And so really for me, you can give me 100 ideas and I run the same process for every idea. I don't look at businesses as being all that intrinsically different at the foundation level. They may have different skill sets involved, or they may have different tech requirements, or they may have different, intrinsic skills. But the foundation of business, it really makes no difference if I'm selling a kitchen towel or selling a cookie or selling a digital product. The widget is the widget, and I can use my checklist against any widget to get at least whether it's vetting enough to go to the next few phases in the process.
Right, Amy. Now, in terms of businesses, should they think a big business is only business, and a small business is not a business? So should they always expect to have a big business because they hear about businesses? So sometimes you conjure that idea that it might have to be a big business. How should they look at this whole concept about big business? When does this empowerment come? With a small business, doing any business, or only big business? How does that work?
So every big business started as a small business. Amazon started in a garage. Apple Computer started in a garage. They all started as a small business. And they all had their issues along the way. If you start following any of their journeys, you'll realize that they all had their ups and downs. So every single business starts small. And so you're not going to start a big business off the ground. It just doesn't really work that way. So I think any business is a business as long as the mindset is that you are turning that idea into a cash revenuing concept. If I'm constantly putting money into my business and I'm not revenuing out of my business, that is just a great big hobby with a business card. Like I said, go back to my guitar. I have a guitar. I take guitar lessons. I have to pay every time. I pay somebody to teach me. It is never going to revenue me. I am never going to go and play guitar in a band. I just do it because I thought it was an interesting thing, and my son started learning how to play guitar. There is nothing wrong with hobbies. But a business should be on the trajectory of going from something that you put your money into to something that you start to earn a living out of. And if you're 2 years into your business and you're saying, I'm still not making any money, I'm not paying myself, then you need to reevaluate what your model is. Because if you are not revenuing inside of 2 years, you should be revenuing way earlier than that. Then you've got a great big hobby with a business card. And that needs to be reevaluated, because that is not a path that's going to be replicatable, and it's not a path that's going to grow. But every business starts small. I know that every single business that I have, the packaging 3 years down the path is not the same packaging I started with. The website that I had to begin with is not the website I have 5 years later. The buy-ins that I have when I start are not the buy-ins that I have as I start revenuing. My businesses don't all look the same, and that's absolutely okay. I just needed to get going and get started so that my business could grow and outgrow my baby formulas and outgrow my baby funds into funds that could then make it look more like I kind of had in my mind. But it's just more important to get it off the ground, not that it looks like something polished that looks like I have in my mind's eye. I'll tell you, when I first started my design company 5 years ago, I started that company with $1,000. That was the total buy-in that I had. I would go to markets. I didn't even have a sign. I didn't have a sticker. I didn't have stickers on anything. I just went with my products and I sold my products, and I sold lots of my products. But when I first started, I wanted to put my money into products, not my money into marketing, and my mouth ran just fine. So I was able to talk myself around all the marketing that I really couldn't afford. So $1,000. It's now a really high six-figure job, and I make a full-time living out of it, all for $1,000. Macarons was the same. I started that business with $800 to sell a little tiny cookie. You don't have to have tons of money to get going. The most important part that you need is the tenacity to keep going no matter what.
Absolutely. Tenacity is very much required. Some people, some women may evaluate it this way, that listen, I've got to manage my household. It should not get impacted, even though the idea is good. Mm-hmm. Second thing is, there is so much of legal work, all this technical work required. And that is required first before I launch my business. How should they look at this part? Because this can again make them never launch their business.
So I'll address the household responsibilities. So, we all have seasons in life. Like I said, my season right now is my 3 children are in college. They are not requiring a lot of my time. They actually don't live with me anymore, so they don't really require much of my time at all. So I have a different season. Now, if I was a mom who had a brand new baby, that may not be a season for me to launch a new concept. That may be a season to, in my spare time, hone down, kind of, try to funnel that down, but maybe not the time to launch it. Because again, my household responsibilities, my responsibilities as a mom, really, for me, would take priority, because that was really important to me as raising my children. I also have a very helpful husband. So my husband was always willing, if I had something when they got to be middle school or whatever, he was willing to kind of help out with them so I could go do a market or whatever. So I was very fortunate with that. The legal side is honestly, in most industries, not nearly as intimidating as most people think. So for instance, here in the United States, you want to create a corporation. Now that legal entity structure is universal. Every country I've come up against has some level of incorporation. It's just maybe not called that. So in the United States, our corporations are designated by state. That's how ours are run. So for me, I just go on to the Georgia Secretary of State website and create my legal entity. That takes all of about an hour, and it takes about 10 days for them to approve that. And then in our country here, we have to create what's called an employer identification number. You can do that online. That takes all of 5 minutes to do, not that big a deal. And then, so that kind of sets up the legal structure. So that basically gives me what my company's name is and basically tells everybody how I'm doing business. Now, I own a bakery. So here in the state of Georgia, I have to have a secondary license. I have to have a food service license. to be able to sell food product in the state of Georgia. And so I had to go through their process of application and to get my license from them. Wasn't all that difficult. Usually, there might be some questions, but not all that difficult. And once all of that kind of comes together, then here in my city, I can then go to my city government and apply for my business license. So you just got all these little parts and pieces. But again, I just break those down into individual goals and I just start checking them off. Now, every industry is going to have a different set of requirements. My design company, for instance, had none of that. I just had to create the LLC, get the sales tax ID, the EIN, and I was off to the races because there's no legal structure or entity that regulates printing products, for instance. So, again, it just comes down to don't look at all the parts and pieces you have to do way up here. Small checklist, create the legal entity, and a lot of countries and city municipalities will have a checklist on their websites as to what you need to comply with your local, state, and government regulations. So there's something similar to what we have in the United States all over. I've checked out different entities in Europe and Australia and different things like that. And even though they're not called the same thing we call them in America, everybody has that level. There are those entities, they're just called different things.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of, people can have the tendency of looking at that, I want to be my own boss. And that is where I should become an entrepreneur. So should they look at it from that perspective as empowerment? Or is it about empowerment, that power? Or is it business is more about responsibility because others are dependent on you? How should one actually pragmatically look at it on the ground?
So, there is something nice about saying that I am my own boss. I guess that does seem great. It's kind of like, I guess my kids tell me when they were little that they can't wait to grow up because then they can set their own bedtime. And I'm asleep 4 hours before they are now that they can set their own bedtime. Even though I can set my own bedtime too. So, it's in theory kind of nice to be able to create and be your own boss. But at the end of the day, I'm my own boss, which means nobody gets me up and gets me to work. Nobody says I have to clock in at a certain time and work till a certain time. I do have a lot of freedom now with my time. When I first started my business drives all of my time. And now I'm in a spot that I get to drive a lot more of my time in what I want to do. And I do love it. It's all I've ever done. I have really never worked in a corporate environment. I really have only been an entrepreneur. And I like it. But you have to understand that just because nobody is sitting here telling you to come to work, I still have a scope of work that I have to get done anyway. I was in the office in my studio all day yesterday and the day before getting some projects that I had to get done for a deadline that I had on Wednesday in the week to get done. So yes, I do like being my own boss, but being my own boss in certain seasons is really not all that it's cracked up to be. Sometimes it's nice to work and know that you're going to get a paycheck on Friday, no matter what. As an entrepreneur, as I'm in the growth mode, there are weeks that I didn't get a paycheck because other people had to get paid before me. So, but again, it's part of the journey, and enjoying that part of the journey and seeing what it is for what it is really part of it. But I really would not change anything about being an entrepreneur. I love watching my ideas that I have come to the marketplace. My book that I wrote, that's what that's about. It's about taking your idea from idea to the marketplace. And I love that journey. I think it's a tremendously fun journey. But I'm also risk does not bother me. People who are really risk adverse, this entrepreneurship can be really struggle for them. But I'm somebody who likes to really kind of truly rappel down buildings in 4-inch high heels. So I like a good adrenaline rush. So, and a lot of entrepreneurship is about that risk, that ability to take that risk and jump off the side and build it as you go. And that's really what I love.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there is so much to learn from you, Amy, and I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of women would like to connect with you, learn more from you, about from your businesses, several businesses. So what's the best way for them to connect with you?
So Lady BizWiz, it's on the screen. So it's just eliminate the space in between it.com is my website. It's going to have my ebook and my paperback book. It's also going to have how you can work with me. And in about 15 days, it's going to have my new business plan masterclass, which is where I'm going to break down these steps that I've talked about into an easily digestible piece for people to kind of vet their ideas and get their businesses off the ground. But I would love to work with anybody. You can also follow me on all the social media channels and see what I'm up to there. But I'm just really, I believe that women are fabulous entrepreneurs. And so women, if you're listening to me and you have an idea, you can do this. You really, really can. I'm not making this up. Just kind of get out of your own head when things don't go exactly the way you want it to go and keep moving forward. No matter what, as long as you're moving forward, you're one step closer to your goal.
Absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.